Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Terror Zone. This episode is no way going to be light enough at all. Today, we'll be talking about Sleeping Beauty. And it's one of those stories that you might want to leave on if you can't do it. Because this one, warning, there's nothing but darkness in this story. It's one of the more darker stories of any we've been through before. So please, reframe. You don't want to watch. But if you're still here, endure it. I'll be pulling any punches with this one, for sure. But before we get into anything dark, let's remind ourselves of what the real story of Sleeping Beauty is all about. The story is about this king and queen who always dreamed of having a daughter. And then their wish came true with their daughter Aurora. They throw a party for her, and everybody in the kingdom was invited, including the 3 good fairies who gifted her powers of different things, like beauty, song, and one more thing. Maleficent was unfortunately not invited to the party. So she cast an evil spell on the baby, where she'd be cursed when she turned 16 to prick her finger on a spindle of a spinning wheel. One of the good fairies actually managed to resemble this spell, but we're not sure if it's going to work at all or anything. After shortly that, the king burned every spinning wheel in the castle. But just to be sure, they also kept the princess in the raising of the 3 good fairies. After lading and hiding, Maleficent was trying to find her. She couldn't find her at once, but she had disguised in the good fairies. And she stayed with them for years, until one day, walking in the woods to find berries for them, she finds Prince Philip, falls in love with him immediately. Misunderstandings ensue, and the fairies surprise Aurora with the fact that she is a princess. And all shenanigans ensue and misunderstandings ensue. We find out that, he's about to be wed to Prince Philip, which Aurora thinks is not Prince Philip. Some other guy, aside from a different man that she met in the woods. Other things lead to ensue, and we find her asleep from Maleficent. When she pricked her finger, it wasn't too much for her. Maleficent hypnotized her, I believe, and pricked her dead. The good fairies were too late. They put the whole kingdom to sleep until she was rescued. Unfortunately, Prince Philip was captured too by Maleficent after tricking him for going into the cottage. She plans to keep him in here until he grows old, and when he does, he'll be too weak to stop. He'll be weak to wake up Aurora until then. Good thing that the good fairies were there to free him and helped him out to free out of Maleficent's clutches. Throughout the whole thing, he was given a sword and a shield from the good fairies, able to fight off Maleficent with thorns and dragons. The fairies helped out as much as they could, and Philip helped out too. They got up to the tower, and he was able to kiss Princess Aurora awake. They were married, and the end. Now that you guys know how the story usually goes, here are the more darker stuff. There are 3 different versions of Sleeping Beauty. We're going to talk about each one of them together and talk about each of the differences between them. First, we'll start with the Grimm version. Then we'll go with the Sun and Talia version. And then we'll go to the last one, which is called Sleeping Beauty in the Woods. We'll start with Grimm. Which is titled Little Briar Rose, which is the name they gave to Aurora in the Disney movie. nickname. In this story, there are a few key things that happen in the story, like a wise woman volunteers because they witnessed enough golden plates. You see, in this version, Loveliness is known as a wise woman. So, there weren't enough golden plates for her. So they had to leave her out and not be invited to the party. Instead of a kiss, Aurora was actually going to be asleep for just 100 years instead, and she'd wake up after 100 years left. Aurora also finds a key to a locked door with a woman sawing phloxwood seed, which means she was sewing with a spinning wheel, and she touched a phlox seed, making her die to the ground. She'd never seen a spinning wheel before, so when she saw it, she automatically was mesmerized by it. A rose bush grows around the whole kingdom, locking the Sleeping Beauty in. With the legend, it was a legend that people talked about too. A prince overhears this, and he comes into the castle. Along the way, he goes through many perils to get there, almost getting impaled by the many thorns that was inside. But he got past them all, no problem. When he got through, he ended up at the castle. When he got there, there was no problem. When he got there, and he tries to come into the castle to wake the Sleeping Beauty. But unfortunately, he was poked to death and impaled by many of the rose thorns. In fact, many princes tried to get into the castle, but none were successful because of those darn thorns. More 100 years pass. Another prince comes along to try it. Thorns turn him into gorgeous flowers and safely walked. Then a few years later, one prince came to the castle that actually was pretty successful and got through many of the thorns through. He manages to get out there safely, and once he got into the castle, he manages to steal a kiss from the Sleeping Beauty. She wakes up and she instantly falls in love. Everyone woke up and they get married at the end. But, like I said before, it just so happens that they were kissing while she was, still, it just so happens that when they were kissing, she woke up. She kind of woke up after 100 years, pretty much. So that was not because of a kiss, because she woke up because of 100 years. Yeah, so the spell kind of wore off after a while. Anyway, that's the Grimm fairy tale story. Now we're going to move on to another fairy tale story that's really dark too, compared to many of the other versions. Next, we'll be talking about the next story. And I tell you, it's not anything light like this one. It only gets darker from here. So if you're still here and you can't handle it now, there's no turning back. This is the point of no return. This is one of the more darker stories of Sleeping Beauty. You have been warned. This one is called Sun, Moon, and Talia. And you'll see why it's called that. Once upon a time, there was a king who had a daughter, just had a daughter. To celebrate, he invites all the fortune tellers to present their fortune to the little princess. One of the fortune tellers says that he'll be killed by a piece of flax. The king, hearing this, decides to burn all the spinning wheels in the kingdom. It's like a Disney version, pretty much. So time later, when the daughter got older, she finds a spinning wheel with a woman using it, and much like the last story, she gets cursed. Touch a flax and lies dead. Sleep. The king's sad about it. He left his kingdom abandoned, leaving his daughter's lifeless body on a chair by a locked door. Years later, another king comes across the kingdom, sees Talia sitting there, still lifeless. He tries talking to her, but there was no response. He decides to take her home. He was so touched by her beauty that he made love to her. Yeah, you could see where that went. More than just a kiss, you know. The king brings her back, leaving her abandoned as if nothing happened. 9 months later, Talia had baby twins, a boy and a girl. It was a painless birth, believe it or not. And the babies were taken care of by fairies until fairies while she was still sleeping. I guess she slept through this whole thing. Anyway, one of the babies one day misses her milk and mistakes it for her finger. She sucks the flax out, and which wakes Talia awake, super confused with seeing her two babies. And the fairies taking care of them. But she said they look like two red gems, so she accepted them as her own. Sometime later, the king returned. Sometime later, the king somehow remembers Talia and comes back. When he finds out about the newborns, Talia tells the king everything that happened. All of it. And accepts it and falling in love with him as well. Immediately. Sorry. What? Just what? Like, if I were her, I probably would not even accept this at all. He fell in love with her without her consent. How could she be in love with him at this moment? I just don't get it. So days and night had passed, and the king came back to his kingdom. And he wouldn't stop talking about his new kids, Sun and Moon, which they call them. He said they were like two little eggs. But his wife became very surprised about this and sent her servant to kill the kids to the tick. To send a letter invitation to the family to come them over to the kingdom. So Talia and the kids did. She hatches a plan to cook two of the kids and forces the king to eat them without him knowing. So she orders the cook to cook the kids. But he looked at the kids and he just couldn't do it. He thought they were like two golden apples. So instead he cooks goats' kids in many different ways. With the queen giving it all the dishes to the king to eat, she encourages him to eat more, for it was all his. Eat up, she said. Didn't realize what she truly meant by that phrase. She says, "This is again." And the king yells at the queen for that. Couldn't have children. The king was yelling about how the queen could not have children like Talia did. The queen, mad at this, she tried to trick Talia, and he storms out. I really don't blame the queen for doing this. I mean, she might be feeling jealous. After all, the king kind of did say that he was going on a hunting trip and talks about the kids that he cheated on along with the other woman named Talia. It just messed up for her. So I don't blame her for feeling the way she does. Anyway, raging mad, she tricks Talia into coming to the kingdom. When she arrives, the queen says a lot of nasty things to her and burns with her about the king. After that, Talia tried to explain what happened, but the queen did not listen. She kept burning and being nasty to her all throughout the kingdom. The queen also blames her for making the king do all these things. And she explained that it was not her. The king did it by himself. The queen wouldn't listen, that she was under the sleeping spell. So she decides to burn her at the stake at 12 o'clock ish. Anyway, Talia tries to tell her that she does not want to be burned at the stake, but it was too late. She ties her up, hangs her down, and puts her in the fire and burns her to death. She wails and screams in pain. The king comes back and sees what's going on and throws the queen into the fire instead of Talia being burned burned into her whole body, wailing in pain. The king frees Talia, and they were very happy together, but they were sad that their children were happy together. And the cook comes back to say that he should be awarded because he actually just showed the king that he saved his kids. So, with that in mind, he never found out that he actually ate his kids, but he awarded them anyway for after what he heard what actually was going to happen. He awarded the cook, and everything was saved. The end. So, dark, isn't it? It only gets even worse from here. Everyone to the last story, Sleeping Beauty in the Woods. Now, this one's not as dark as the one I just talked about, but it is definitely just as dark, pretty much. The story pretty much is the same as only the evil woman, the villain, was assumed dead. Everyone was surprised that she was not. Ariel was given golden silverware. When Sleeping Beauty slept, she slept in a golden blanket. A youngest fairy cast a spell over the whole kingdom, making everybody fall asleep, covered with thorns. With her chariot of dragons, she sweeps the whole area clean. And then she sends an elf to tell everyone in the kingdom, before they sleep, of course. For 100 years later, our prince comes in safely to the princess. She wakes up in a minute when the prince walks in. For 4 hours they've been flirting with each other, instantly falling in love. A feast, got married, and lived happily ever after. The end. But wait, it's not the ending yet. What, you thought I was going to end it right there? No, that's silly. It continues. For years, the prince kept switching to kingdoms, back and forth, to his kingdom, to the princess's kingdom, without his wife noticing. And so he had children too. Aurora and a son named Dan or George. No one really knows for sure which one the name is. But anyway, Aurora is very similar to the one we see in the Disney version. So that's probably where they got the name from. Anyway, but soon his mother finds out. In this version, it's a mother instead. Sorry for my mistake with the wife part. And she does not take kindly to this. She is an ogress that can attack at any moment. And especially if she lusts for children. The king dies, and the prince takes over to the throne. The whole family was able to come to the kingdom from now on and welcomed in. But once they were welcomed in, the queen declared war on the whole area, which making the prince having to leave his home to fight in the war, leaving Talia and the children behind with the kingdom, with the queen, with the mother queen. Anyway, the mother does the same thing he does in the original story. She orders the cook to cook them up, but instead of the king eating them, she eats them as an ogre. But the cook doesn't really cook the children. Just like that, he hesitates, just like the other cook does, and couldn't kill them. He decides to cook many different things for her. Instead, she kept lusting for more and more. The cook gives her stuff like different animals to replace it with. She lusts for more and more, that she asked to eat Talia next. But the cook had a hard time finding other animals to cook with. So he had to do what he could do. Kill Talia. The cook rushes up to her and tries to kill her with a burning passion. But then he stops. He just couldn't do it. So he decides to cook a dough for her instead. Sleeping Beauty in this story. The Sleeping Beauty does not really know that her children are alive and were with the cook's wife. So she decides to let the cook kill her, and that she hopes to meet her kids in the afterlife. But he just couldn't do it. He later tells the princess that her children are alive and well. So with that in mind, she goes with them. And the queen, after that whole dough, she still lusts for more food. Lots more food. As an ogress, she storms the castle, searching for more food. She hears laughing and children and playing. She finds the whole family still alive and well. Sleeping Beauty and her 2 kids. Furious, she ties them up and puts them under a boiling pot with different things inside, like rats, snakes, and bugs, boiling in a pot. And I'm not kidding with this. Just by sheer luck and complete convenience, the prince comes back at the right time, in the nick of time. They're about to be going into the pot. Their doom. Queen, seeing the prince in the nick of time, just goes crazy and throws herself into the pot, being cooked to death. As the prince saves Sleeping Beauty and the whole family, they were safe and happy. The end. And those are the 3 stories of Sleeping Beauty. I hope you enjoyed them, and I'll see you next time on The Terror Zone. I do hope that you were not scared off by this particular story. There is so many more to come next.